I'll read it before I leave. I went to school here and they told me to read.
Can I have one more paper, sorry?
I said I went to school and one of the history teachers told me to read anything.
No, just one
We can
piece of
swing it.
paper, I swear. I thought I had a notebook in my backyard, I do not, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to, take attendance if you're here. With roll call, I guess, not attendance, say here. Dr. Pilata?
Here.
Andrew Hennius?
Here.
Erin Earl?
Here.
Jen Lima? Here. Bob Mitchell?
Here.
I think that is everybody who is on the committee. The next is citizens' comments. Anybody here would like to speak? I figure I'll read the one that we have after the people
Yep.
actually speak. Yep, okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hello again. You may remember me from March 6th when I was last here.
Yes.
I'm just realizing that you were all at that meeting, so a lot of what I've written is old news to you, so I'm going to just kind of scan through it really quickly.
Yeah, no worries if you're repetitive either.
Okay, but I know I only have 3 minutes,
Okay.
so
Oh,
I'm
yes,
going to
that's
be careful. So I attended the meeting on March 6th of the subcommittee that addressed the new rates for renting space in North Kingstown School Department buildings. I wanted the school committee to know the impact of these new, much higher rates on the cost for a concert weekend. In December 2019, just before the pandemic hit, we had our last pre-pandemic concert at the high school, at which we paid $340 for the weekend. That's 13 hours of use, 340. When we came back 3 years later, after the pandemic and after the rate increase, which was this past December 2022, we paid $890 for the same 13 hours of usage. This is almost triple the cost from our December 2019 concert weekend. In a few weeks, we will be having our spring concert, May 6th and 7th, at the high school. And we are looking at an even more expensive concert weekend. I would like to read the email that Bob Correnti, who's the Director of School Facilities, just sent to all the groups using school department facilities for weekend or holiday functions. He says, as of March 20th, 2023, ABM, our custodial provider, will no longer be covering events free of charge on Saturdays, Sundays, or holidays. The charge is going to be $38.01 an hour with a minimum of 3 hours. $38.01. Unfortunately, North Kingstown School Department does not have these costs budgeted and will need to roll these costs to the facility renters. If there are 2 or more events in a building, the cost will be split accordingly. Any event that's open to the public will require a custodian to be present. I think that's always been true. We apologize for short notice, and if you would like to cancel your events, you certainly may. So that was his email. This means that the cost of a custodian, which is $38.01 per hour for 13 hours of usage, will amount to $494.13. This is on top of paying $890 for our concert weekend for school usage. This is not sustainable to us. We are a nonprofit. We pay our bills. One big thing for us is we have been offering a music scholarship since 1991, and that's one of our goals. We will never stop doing that no matter what. But if we have to keep paying these rates on top of all the other bills we have for each concert usage, building usage, it's just not sustainable for us and probably for other nonprofit groups that use school department buildings. So as I did a month ago, I'm kind of pleading with you, and I don't know how much control you have.
3 minutes.
Yes, if you could just try to lower our rates, it would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else?
And here's another name.
Did anybody else sign up to
Yes.
speak?
Sorry?
Did anybody else sign up to
Yeah, I
speak?
did.
Oh, Megan, okay, yeah.
Okay, hi, Megan Riley, 15 Eden Court. I guess I'm just trying to get some clarity at some point. I know you can't respond, but on the makeup of the policy committee in general, because if you are going to create a committee, which it looks like in fact you have, it then becomes an advisory committee, and per the school committee's own policy BCF, there is a way about which you have to create the committee, and that means that you need the superintendent to recommend members, and I mean, it's all in that policy, so I won't repeat it, but there should be members who represent the community, students, parents, possibly a CLAC member, teachers, business people, a wide variety of people who represent the community. I did actually email Dr. Paolucci back when she was the interim superintendent in December for clarity on this committee, because there was just a lot of flux in our district. And at the time, she did tell me, I have the email, where she basically told me the only members at that time were Ms. Sapala, Dr. Paolucci, and then Ms. Lima and Ms. Earl. But I was looking at the school committee policy, BCF, and I did also mention that to her, and it looks like there need to be members of the community represented. So I guess I'm just trying to find out, get an answer. It's not just me who's asking. I know there have been other people who've had the same questions about exactly what the policy states. And if you don't want to follow the policy, that's fine. The school committee has every right to then change the policy, but it's kind of like one or the other, because the policy does currently exist. The other thing I'd like to ask is that to the extent possible, if meetings could possibly not be overlapped, for instance, I really would have liked to have also gone to the wellness committee. Fortunately, some other people went to, because I had asked if they were going, and they are, so I instead came to this one. But it would be nice if we didn't have to split up, because it's just difficult for the public to try to get to all of these meetings. I know not a lot of people come, but I like to. So in the future, if you could just take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would just like, it's a little different here, Megan, where we are actually able to respond, so I just would like to take a minute and respond to the second one first, which is, you're 100% right, the subcommittee meetings, it was unfortunate they were scheduled at the same time, and we are absolutely gonna make sure that that doesn't happen moving forward. And as far as the charge for this committee, we actually had a specific charge, policy set up to create this committee. We discussed it twice in the school committee, and the school committee voted to approve the charge to create this, subcommittee. It was addressed who to include on this. We talked about whether or not, how to include, who to include. We discussed it twice during the school committee meetings. And parents, special education people, people from various components of the community will be invited to participate in meetings when there are policies that would, directly affect them, and actually sit at the table and participate in those policies. And as you can tell, citizens' comments here are a little bit different. They're a back and forth, because we do think it's super important that people are able to comment on and, actively participate in policy that affects them.
So do you know when that's gonna start?
It has already
Okay.
started. I mean,
Okay.
so when and that's why the policy, that are discussing are out on the agendas. Citizens' comments are here, if there are questions that come up, and when we know that there is a policy that is going to affect certain populations of people, those people will be invited to come to the meeting and give input on those policies before they are kicked out to the school committee.
Okay, alright, thank you.
Did anybody have anything that they wanted to weigh in on there?
No, I'll just say we looked at BCF, and I can relook at it too as school committee chair as well, because I don't wanna have conflicting policies, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks.
And then there was a citizen's comment.
just have one
Oh,
question.
yeah, they want to,
sorry.
yeah.
The first speaker,
Mrs. Pease?
Yeah. You're looking to reduce the charge or eliminate it?
Oh my goodness, well, that would be a pipe dream to eliminate it.
Well,
I would,
what-
reduce it. I understand that we're using the buildings and we should be paying some money. I do understand that. And the $340 that we used to spend is really, really old, and we did it year after year after year, so that when they made this big change, it was just huge. It just, you know, it doubled our rehearsal, costs, and it almost, well, next, at our spring concert, it'll quadruple what we used to pay for concert weekend. But part of that, I don't think you have any control over, that's the custodial issue.
Yeah, I wanted to just
Yeah.
address that, and so, and I think you had brought it up the last time you came, is that was written in as part of the fee, but that it wasn't being charged, and we most certainly did not say anything to the custodial company, but then they sent some notification. I just wanted you not to think it was in result of what you said, I think by happens, yeah, it was definitely, yes, you're coming from Anna. No, but, the timing was not, it's coincidental, not, I don't think it's aligned, and so that company, I don't know if they're under new management or whatnot, but we received that notification that I think they realized that they weren't doing that, and that's where that's coming from, but most certainly, and the reason it's still on is that we definitely, our goal would not to be to price out the community, and so we're obviously gonna talk about it today, but most certainly hear you on the increase, and then, like, with the bad timing of them actually now asking for the custodian, money, that, you know, is
Yeah.
an additional challenge, so.
Yeah, cause I think you had alluded to it last time, that you were expecting the bill and you didn't get it, cause that has always been in the policy that anybody who rents the facilities will be charged, and I think for whatever reason, it just hasn't been being
Well, you know, it's
charged.
funny, back in 2019 and the years before that, when we got our bills from the school department for concert weekend, there was no delineation for custodians, so we just thought it was all in that fee, and then the school department paid the custodians, and maybe that's how it worked. But now that you're contracting with an outside custodial
And I think they were always with ABM, even then.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
but I'm not sure with that company what's happened as far as who
Yeah.
in different things, so.
Yeah.
We hear you.
I am having a problem connecting to the Wi-Fi. Do you have this?
Do you want the agenda?
statement?
I got the agenda here.
Do you have it?
I have it written, printed out.
No, she
Oh, you're
wants,
looking for it.
the statement, there was another citizen that couldn't make it, and so we said that we would read their, statement, cause they had a work conflict. Is it linked to the thing, or is it?
It is linked, but I can't,
Yeah.
if you, no, it's not linked to that, I linked it to my notes.
See if I
You
can
have the
pull this
email,
up.
right?
Can you remember which person? Yep.
Oh, here we go, I got it, there we go. Okay, so this is from Heather Murphy, and she asked that we read it. She said, I'm writing in reference.
Her address is there too, if you wanna do
Yep.
it just for the.
41 Mount Laurel Way. I'm writing in reference to policy professional conduct with students. There is a statement which says, commenting on a student's physical appearance or body in any manner that can have the effect of objectifying the student and or compromising the student's social and emotional well-being. Given this statement, teachers are now not in a position to address students who are likely violating the dress code policy. Therefore, the policy was changed. The statement in this policy can now be used as a weapon now rather than a tool for conduct. This statement is too subjective, not even close to objective and measurable. It's developmentally appropriate for teenagers to push limits. It's the role of the adults in the building to keep limit pushing in check. This is exactly why we must be careful and make certain there are clear boundaries. Boundaries that show our young adults how to make respectful choices, respect the boundaries set by the school, and to show respect to their teachers. We cannot have policies where the students are in a position to be in control. This one statement is now a weapon for the student upset that they were in trouble for violating the dress code policy. Dr. Morse did the right thing by changing the dress code policy to protect her teachers, but she should not have had to. Statements such as this one give a student who's trying to push and break boundaries the perfect weapon against a teacher they might not like. Who judges social and emotional well-being? This, along with some of the Title IX language, makes it so our teachers are walking on eggshells rather than being able to use their authority in a proper way. I've heard so many say they've given up on trying to restore order, letting the kids truthfully get away with behaving well, like, for lack of a better word, brats. We're creating an environment where teachers are leaving the profession in droves. We heard from them at the end of the school year. I would think you all remember this. It was rather upsetting to hear. While likely unintentional, this is the consequence of this statement. We're creating an environment where our teens are learning only to feel entitled and disruptive. This entitlement we see so prevalent in our culture starts with policy statements as this. I know I want my student to know that school is a place where respect for self and others is a high priority. I would hope that you will revisit this statement and change accordingly so our teachers are not the sacrificial lamb. Again, that was a citizen comment from Heather Murphy. She was unable to attend tonight's meeting. She asked that we read it into the record, and at her request, we've added the policy she was referring to, GBEBB, professional conduct with students, to the agenda for today's discussion. So that's all we had for citizens'
Ms. Seema,
comments.
can you just read the statement that is in question one more time?
It is part of that policy, and it says, commenting on a student's physical appearance or body in any manner that can have the effect of objectifying the student and or compromising the student's social and emotional well-being.
Yep, and this is part of a policy, and we'll get to it, it's on the agenda later, but it was created, in June of 2022.
Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting, March 6th?
See the mic here,
Did
I'll be honest, I don't know the policy. I apologize.
anybody else?
I did, yeah.
You did? Everybody else get a chance to review them? Frank? Did you review them?
No questions?
Did you review them?
Did you review?
Did you review the minutes? Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye?
Anybody opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Alright, motion passed. So, the policies that we have for discussion tonight, does anybody have a preference for how we approach these?
The school building and field ones first, so
Okay.
I would recommend that we go with that first, so that we don't have to make the votes here, wait any longer, but.
I would agree. So we had talked about this last time, and, basically what we had talked about was kind of what was alluded to tonight, that, this change in the policy was put in effect in 2019. The community organizations didn't really feel the effect of the change in policy until this past year, post-COVID, because things had kind of not been, happening. And the discussion was around, was there a way to give some relief to the community organizations, but still ensure that, the department was not, school department wasn't, was still providing for the usage for the building and wear and tear. And, we talked about ways perhaps to increase fees for nonprofit organizations, and we had asked, to get some more information from administration as to who has been using, the building and, what the breakout was between profit and nonprofit. And, actually, before we have this discussion, I just wanna address something, if people will allow me a moment. I don't know who else in this room is.
Yeah, Mike was supposed to do that.
No, we
Concurrent.
got
You got it.
information
Yeah, I
from.
think we've been though, yeah, no, we're
Yeah.
fine.
I just wanna take a minute and address something as it relates to this policy. I don't know who is aware at the table and who isn't, but an email was sent to, Andrew stating that it was a conflict of interest for me to be involved in the policy committee over the building use policy, especially if the discussion is to lower or remove the fees for the nonprofit, organizations. They pointed out that since I run a local nonprofit, tank, that actually held an event here this past Saturday, and that lowering fees would benefit my organization, it might be advisable for me to recuse myself from this specific policy discussion. I wanna take a few minutes to address this. To begin with, in the email, this person also noted incorrectly that the event this past Saturday raises money for my organization. That's not true. In fact, this event, which almost 700 people attended, cost my organization almost $10,000 to put on. We fundraise for this all year to secure the necessary funds. This person also pointed out that NEANC is one of our sponsors. That is true. They questioned whether that raises legal issues. NEANC and NERI are sponsors. The event celebrates diversity in education and children's literature. It makes sense that they would wanna sponsor something like that. But there's actually another 15 organizations who help make the event, possible.
Can I ask a quick question, Jen? What's
Sure.
the first acronym you're saying? I'm sorry.
NEANC.
What, I'm not
The
familiar with
North
that one.
Kingstown branch of NERI.
Oh, I always say it NEA, NK.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here we are.
Yeah,
I was like,
making
what?
that up.
I was like, where are we?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for the clarification.
So coincidentally, at the same time, the NKSD also received an anonymous public request following the last policy meeting, looking for copies of all the facility usage requests since August, by organizations, including documentations of the required insurance and the 501c3 status. We filled that request, and once it was filled, they came back saying, no, we're actually looking for the organizations who are using the facility in April. That same email address who made that request sent an email to one of the food trucks that my organization was having at our event on Saturday. That email address wanted to know information on how payments with our vendor were structured. The person who requested I recuse myself from this policy committee has also made statements implying that my organization is violating North Kingstown policy by offering scholarships to graduating seniors and by gifting books to the North Kingstown school libraries. I want to state for the record that my organization, Tank, has rented North Kingstown School Department facilities for a total of 17 hours since our organization's inception in 2020. 8.5 for last year's event and 8.5 hours for this year. I did not bring this policy before this organization to save my organization money. You can all draw your own conclusions around people seem to have an issue with my organization. The Rhode Island Code of Ethics says that a person subject to the Code of Ethics does not have an interest which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his or her duties in the public interest and of his or her responsibilities as prescribed by the laws of this state if any benefit or detriment accrues to him or her or any person within his or her family or any business associate or any business by which the person is employed or which the person represents as a member of a business profession, occupation, or group, or of any significant and definable class or persons within the business profession, occupation, or group to no greater extent than any other similarly situated member of the business profession, occupation, or group, or of the significant and definable class of persons within the business profession, occupation, or group. What that basically means is as long as my nonprofit is not benefiting any more or less than any other nonprofit in the state, there is no conflict of interest. So, I will not be recusing myself from this discussion or any other discussions around nonprofit organizations in the state, and I just wanna get that out of the way. And in the future, if anybody has any questions around my conflict, perceived or not, they can reach out to me directly instead of to the lawyer. So, moving on from that, we
Jen,
did.
can I just ask the lawyer a clarifying question
Sure.
for the record?
Sure.
Lawyer, what do you think regarding that? No, I'm very curious, like, I
Yeah,
think
no,
that makes sense, but.
I spoke with Ms. Lima, there is no conflict, and she's citing the exact spot of the code, as long as she's not looking for something specific for her nonprofit that other nonprofits wouldn't be able to take advantage of, there's no conflict whatsoever.
Thank you.
Thank you. So getting back to the business at hand, we did receive information from admin. Unfortunately, it's not broken down in such a way that it's really helpful. What we really need to get is something that shows, what are nonprofit organizations, what are profit organizations, for us to really be able to tell what changes, we could make without, impacting. What is really interesting is that the largest users of the building are the recreation department, the YWMCA of Greater Providence, and then after that, it's all internal usage, for the most part, for big, users.
Which email, just so I can follow along with what, we got a
It's-
couple emails about
I
it.
took the email, that Elle had sent, and I took the one that actually was exportable to an Excel document.
Yep.
The one that she sent, which was the uses from July 2021 to July 2022, and I just dumped that into Excel and I did a pivot table.
Got it.
And it's kind of, it's not super accurate, because like I noticed, like if one organization is renting multiple rooms for the same event, it lists the same hours. But it shows for that time period, like the rec department had 2,700 hours, the Y had 2,500 hours. And then building use and activity scheduler were the next two biggest users, but what that means is that it was somebody within the school department who made the
Who booked
reservation,
it,
so
yeah.
it doesn't say what specifically, it was for. But if you go through here, you can kind of see like South County Volleyball is another big user. North Kingstown Jaguar, youth football, the Boy Scouts, Special Olympics. So, you know, you can kind of pick stuff out a little bit, but it doesn't really say who's for profit and who isn't, and how many hours they've been used or what rate they've been charged. So I'm not sure that this really gave us, it does break it out by school, you know, and it does, we can break it out by what they've used it for. But after that, it doesn't have a lot of super helpful information. So I think if we're gonna make a change, the best thing that we could do would just be to say, like some of the other policies in the state, like, Exeter West Greenwich says, you know, they don't charge any usage to, any organization that benefits the community, and they break that down to include civic organizations, and things like that. You know, so we could kind of say we wanted to either give a reduced rate or, you know, or like we talked about before, lower the nonprofit, you know, lower the nonprofit rate, increase the per-profit rate. EWG also charges an application fee, so we could talk about charging an application fee and lower the rate. You know, I think we should decide what our intent is with the policy and then kind of go from there. Unless there is a way for buildings to give us a better breakout from the information that they have.
Yeah, a question that I had, when kind of looking at it is I was surprised, cause normally like with the policy, it will say that like it was like amended and changed like over the years, and I noticed that this one was adopted in 2019, and then it looks like they made some tweaks, which I know was the Boy Scout, Girl Scout
Yeah.
conversation. And so I was curious about like, was there no policy beforehand with the rates, that like would have been affected, or is it, like where did that live beforehand? Like,
No, it did exist,
Yeah.
it's just in
did they abolish a different policy?
they
Is that what
kind of
happened?
tweaked it,
Yeah,
they tweaked
okay.
an existing policy.
But that's not, I can't find that anymore in life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have that historic, cause it's
It
not.
is there,
It
I
is?
saw it,
Okay.
yeah, cause I looked at that the last time, it does live somewhere. Hold on one
Okay.
second.
I was just thinking like, cause I know, I mean, it clearly looks like the reason that they changed this was to obviously make more money, but I was curious if it was like to cover the cost of things, like is it that we're expending, like, you know, because of a certain reason, like I don't think, like, or was the intent to make a profit, like that's where I was curious. I can also go back and watch the video from 20.
Yeah, that's what I did, I
Yeah.
went back to the meeting from 2019,
You know,
I
like, I'll go
found
back
the
to the
original
August one.
policy there,
Yeah.
and that's where all the existing
Yeah, yeah.
ones were, that's
Yeah.
what I did.
Unless I'm wrong, but it doesn't address, nonprofits. It does address nonprofit town leagues, but it doesn't address nonprofit organizations.
On page 6, it looks like it does, so there's a breakdown of community and nonprofit versus outside and for-profit on that table.
The biggest jump up, if I remember from the rate, was in the auditorium and the cafeteria.
Which makes sense, this is what
Mhm.
people would wanna use most often.
Here on the page of nonprofit recreation department. Is that the page you're on?
Yeah, I'm on page 6.
Outside, it has outside group.
It's like community and nonprofit, or outside and or for-profit. So that's where I saw the difference in the discount for nonprofits.
Oh, no, she's looking at page 6. Right. Controls.
Yeah, right here.
Right here, yeah. If you're a community nonprofit.
And I know, Mr. Waterman's out, right now, but I wonder, is it possible, like, this money is, to learn about, like, if this does get changed, like, what effects will this have? So, like, this money's obviously coming in, and then some of it is obviously gonna go directly to the custodial company. I'm assuming we're not charging a mock-up on the, or like a markup on the 38 .01, like I'm assuming that's a dollar to dollar, moment, and so then my question would be for the other money that's coming in, like, where is that getting spent? You know, cause like with the budget and different things, and what impact would this have on, you know, the other side, you know, cause I think what I'm hearing, like the concept, like, of course, we don't wanna, like, especially for nonprofits that are benefiting the community, like, we don't want to upcharge them, but I wanna also make sure that we're not gonna be causing an unintended consequence of then not having enough money in a certain budget line, or not having, being able to cover costs of what we think it is to maintain the buildings, and then have it have a detriment to students. You know, my assumption is, the intent is to have it go back into the facilities so that it can be maintained at the equal level as if it wasn't being used for these extra
And
things.
you'd have to know what the cost would be if you, for nonprofits.
Yeah.
But you have to determine what the charge would be.
I wanna know right now. Like, I know what the charge is now, and so I wanna know, okay, if we make X amount, and then we change it, and next year we make this
Wanna know
much
what that level
less.
of income is?
Yeah, like, what's that gonna affect? You know, like, is it gonna affect, like, is there going to be a downside for the students, which are our main mission? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like how much did they have in the budget? How much did they put in the budget for the budget that we just put through for facility fees? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, so so this would be in revenue, and then any money that comes in somehow is on this line to go back out in some way, or to do something. Like, I wanna make sure that we understand the impact of changing these if we do decide to reduce them. Cause I do think it's the right thing to do, to reduce them. Like, we don't wanna be, you know, like, putting unnecessary tax on folks, but I imagine the folks that made these decisions before us, like, felt like these were the fair and just rates for whatever wear and tear is happening to the building, upkeep, to making sure that our facilities are the best they can be for students. Because that's the one thing that I don't wanna see happen, is a whole bunch of community organizations come in and utilize the facilities, there's wear and tear there, and we don't have the money to maintain that
Right.
space, and we know we use our school buildings for a very long time, and I wanna make sure that the decisions that we make for this policy are going to
Right.
not have negative impact in the future. Although I very much wanna make sure that we can support our community members, cause we want them in the schools, and we want great things like the choir and
Absolutely.
the before and after care programs for the YMCA and things to continue.
Do you know what the mechanics are in terms of, the outside company provides the service?
So the custodian one, I don't actually
I
think
think
it's,
that's separate.
it's not a discussion.
Yeah.
Like that $38.01, Caroline, that's so pretty. It's okay, we like kids here. Did you do that all by yourself? But you're only 4, how is that possible? 5 now? Oh, that must be why, good job. And so the custodial one's not a conversation unless we renegotiate with that firm, and the fact that they didn't charge us and woke up and now are charging us, like, that's all in the contract, and that's a different conversation for a different day. It's our internal fees that I'm curious about. So with the $890, for example, that the choir pays, like, if we were to reduce that back down to $500 an hour, like, what negative impact might it have on the school buildings and the budget with that reduction, is what I'm kind of curious about.
Right, if
You're not gonna be able to answer today, but that's the
No.
information that I would need to know to be able to make a reduction.
Was it
Yeah.
cost of doing business, or was there a reason behind it?
Yeah, were they trying to balance the budget, which is possible,
There's two separate costs then
yeah.
associated with any
Yeah.
organization coming in. So that fee goes to the school department.
yeah. Yeah,
And
so,
that's the fee for the custodial charge.
But the
Yeah.
custodial charge is separate, like, cause like Erin said, we can't do anything about that, so, and I guess the other part of it too is like, what I would really like to see, and I don't know if it's just cause Mike wasn't here that we couldn't get it, is I have to believe, when you fill out the facility usage form, they know how much they're charging you, how many hours you are, and who it's charged to. There has to be a way to generate who, the rate, and the hours, and to just get that in a line, and to know is that, and there also is a thing, are you a nonprofit, yes or no, just to get that, to see how if 90% of our usage goes to nonprofits, then we know we're not gonna be able to make up any reduction by increasing the for-profit. But if it's a 50-50 split, or even a 60-40, maybe we have some wiggle room to kind
Mhm.
increase some of our, you know, for-profit rates to make up some of it. I'd really like to be able to see a breakdown
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah,
Could
so.
I ask a question here?
Mhm.
Could you consider consulting with Plant and Grounds? Because they're the ones that issue us
Mhm.
our invoices, and you can clearly see exactly what you said. The number of hours, they know we are a nonprofit because we had to submit that paperwork.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So
so.
we should have it from everyone.
Yeah, so Frank, so I guess before our next meeting, and perhaps if we could have either, if Mr. Waterman's back from leave, him or Bob, Carenti come to the next policy subcommittee, I think that would be helpful, and also, I think if we could get that data, that would be super helpful as well, because there are other options, you know, like if we reduce the nonprofit and the community one, but increase the outside and for-profit to see if there's tipping point, but also to see, a lot's changed since 2019, you know, like and so, you know, maybe, and on my side, my homework will be, I'll make sure to go back and kind of see what's going on. And see what happens, you know, like try to get a little bit more of
The historical.
yeah, and I mean, I can assume why, but, you know, why those specific numbers, cause my biggest concern is making sure that we don't create a long-term problem where, you know, the buildings are decreasing in quality.
Mhm.
We don't want that for our
No,
students.
of course not. And also too, to know, is there a budget, like, is there a budget line that this ties to?
Yeah, like where in the, yeah. And if that's outside of the operating budget or not.
Well, that's a good question. Whether that's part of their budget, that income, how's that income treated?
Yeah. Yeah, and is
How's
it,
that recorded?
and sometimes it comes right in and then goes right back out, so like I know for some things, like, it could possibly be coming in and then it literally goes right to the, like, paint line and the, you know, like, and it's literally like, oh, every year we paint the auditorium because we know it gets used a lot, or every year we make sure that we do the floors in the gyms because they get done a lot, and it just
Right.
goes right back in, and maybe that's where the increase came from, maybe it costs more now to wax and strip the floors,
Right.
or whatever it might be, or maybe the AV equipment all had to be upgraded, or, you know, whatever, so that's where I don't wanna make
Right,
yeah, like
right,
I wanna
yep.
assume that whoever made this policy set it at the bare minimum of what it could be to maintain those buildings, but I also don't have the data to prove that, so I think that would be super helpful,
I'll try to break it down to.
yeah, that'd be great. And I also wonder, and I don't know where this lies, but like thinking about like short-term, long-term too, and like, you know, like what we can do for nonprofit community organizations in the meantime, like I hate that things take forever
Right.
in
I was just thinking that.
this land, but I don't quite know how that would work as far as like a request for an exception of the policy or reduction in rate due to hardship or something, and where that would, you know, like I don't know.
was thinking that too, 'cause.
And it would have to be fair for
Right, for everybody,
yeah.
right.
But I wonder if there's something we can do in the short term as we try to figure out what's the best path of action. Especially knowing that
They have a
the
concert coming up on
that the
Monday.
custodial company is charging for that fee that was maybe unanticipated, even though clearly stated kind of vibes.
The only problem, the only concern I would have is if you create that sort of, bring it to us and we'll look at different exceptions, you really opened up
You know,
Pandora's
yeah.
For all
box,
exceptions,
excuse me, as
right.
far as to what, you know, now we're using judgment as to what benefits the community
Yeah.
versus what we don't think benefits the community. That would be my concern there.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to hustle.
Okay.
How long after is a invoice due, before or after, like an event? Do we know?
The invoice is after the
It's
event,
30
and I think
days.
they have to check to make sure there's no damage
Mm-hmm.
to the facility. So the invoice would come definitely after, I would say a couple of weeks.
It actually says.
I call it the NFJ, you don't know?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not the
Your
one who
treasurer,
receives
yeah.
the invoice, and Norm Poulin does, and he sent it to me, but I don't know how much time elapsed, but I would say, I would agree with you, just a couple couple weeks.
Mhm.
Payment
not
is
that long.
required within 10 days of the employee's.
Yeah, but they might not send it
Yeah.
that first day, so it's probably like a couple weeks. I'm just trying to think of if we'll have another meeting.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, I
before-
wanted to talk about
yeah.
the timing of these meetings because the policy hasn't met since May, and then we didn't meet until March. And I know people prefer to meet once a month, but I wanted to see if we could try to do 2 a month so that we can at least kind of
Try to catch up.
try to catch up a little bit. So if we met in 2 weeks, maybe we could have some type of resolution or
Mhm.
something. If we had 2 meetings before the next bill was due. Maybe.
Yeah, so maybe Frank, if you could at least, maybe, and I don't mind meeting more often to try to catch up, cause I know we have a lot of work to do, but also, I wanna make sure that we have enough time to get the data that we need as
Right,
well.
yeah.
But, you know, with the fiscal year ending on June 30th, there might be something that they can do with like billing or like, you know, or something where we can try to work things out. And not that it's about one organization, I very much
Right,
appreciate,
'cause I'm
the
sure-
folks that came,
right.
but, kind of just thinking about now that, you know, we're back in this fiscal year and this was the one that really impacts, there wasn't a lot of activity the prior 2 years because of the pandemic, so, just trying to think of some solutions. Frank, do you think it would be possible to get that data in 2 weeks, or is that gonna be hard? Okay, yeah, so let's start there.
They should all have that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think the biggest thing is, like Jen said, the delineation between the nonprofit and the for-profit if possible, and even if it has to be like scanned, like if it's not in the system that way, but there's another way that we can look at it, like
Yeah,
I don't
can-
mind,
I can put
like,
it together.
yeah, whatever we can do to assist in that. Anything else, Jen?
No, I think that's good for this one unless anybody has anything else. Thank you. So I'm gonna propose that we skip the non-discrimination because when we talked the last time, we were gonna invite other members of the district here to discuss the impact that this policy had on them, and it's just us again, so I'm gonna request that for our next meeting. We invite members of the district who this policy would have an impact on.
Yeah, do we wanna be specific?
I think we were not specific the last time, we left it up to administration to invite people, so maybe.
Yeah, any questions on that, Dr. Pallotta, as far as like where this one might land, and then I also would be curious with, Andrew, as far as timeline,
I think this was the one we said was gonna take a while to implement, right?
yeah, but,
Yeah, I think, I mean, we wanted to get this one up and running as quickly as possible, but I do remember the conversation. I mean, I think
yeah.
I made the changes I could, although
Yes, thank you.
I finally found the promptlies. I missed that in my notes, your first email was promptly, I was like, oh, yes, I did find the promptlies. So, and my preference is to continue using promptly, but that's for obvious reasons.
I know.
But we can have that discussion another time.
Yeah.
All I ask is that we don't lose track of this, it's really important that we.
It's high up on my
yeah,
list, for
yeah,
sure, I
yeah.
don't think it's any benefit for us
Well,
to keep
if we're meeting in
rehashing.
2 weeks, I don't think a
Yes,
2 week
yeah,
delay is
yeah.
that big of a deal.
So who specifically do we want to request attend?
I would say human
Sure.
resources is essential.
Yep,
Yep. And then,
I think we wanted somebody from admin, like not this level admin.
like
but
business,
buil-
yeah, maybe one or
building
two
level
building,
admin
one or
level,
two
yeah.
building administrators might be helpful, just to give some perspective, cause that's really, I think, important for any policy that we're doing, is to hear the voices of, you know, those who will have to.
Why don't we have one from each level? One principal from each level.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be ideal, but also if not possible, I'm sure,
Yeah,
what else might be helpful?
We just, just for your consideration, in our policy subcommittees, in Cumberland, we had, the union was represented too, I don't know if.
Mm.
yeah.
It might be worth
Yep.
inviting the
The
two,
union, yep.
there's 2 unions, right?
Oh,
So
yes,
two-
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Certified and non-certified.
yeah,
is that it? Is there just 2
Yes.
in this district? Yeah.
okay, that's a
athletic director perhaps.
For sure, yeah.
That might be, just to get some perspective there, as it's a little bit outside, like, cause there's other folks involved other than just,
Yes. But
like
the
building,
scope applies
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah.
Those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Can I ask a question? Would you ever invite any student representatives, like a student council or?
Yeah, the student union president sits on the school committee, but yeah, that, or, I don't know if they have another, maybe Dr. Morris could advise on another group that might be, helpful, but yeah, that's,
That's a good idea.
yeah, I would say definitely Gabriel, and then, if there's another student leadership group or
Yep.
something.
Okay, so yeah, so if we can, when I send out the follow-up from this, if we can make sure that they get invited to the next meeting when we pick the date, that would be great. So the next one was the investigation and administrative leave. Did everybody get a chance to review that? That's a new policy that we're putting forward for review. Did everybody get a chance to review that one?
I read it when it first came out, but is it?
I'm just curious, what prompted this?
That is a recommendation from the Judge McGurl report. There is currently no policy, that we have in place as to what to do when we have to put anybody out on leave. And it's, Andrew, this was a draft that's being used in another district, correct?
Midwest, I think, actually took me a little time to find one that was sort of workable and direct. But yeah, this was basically a cut and paste from another district, with a couple of modifications that we had gone back and forth on.
One kind of thought would be as we work through this one, kind of to Mr. Mitchell's point, like the union representation and making sure that it doesn't conflict with the union contracts, I think would be extremely important, and so definitely making sure to pull them in at some point.
So maybe we could cover it at the same,
Yeah.
The same time.
Do you want like line item notes?
Yep, if you have them.
One thought I just had with A, it very so under procedures, under A, it very specifically said, face-to-face and or by telephone. Just thinking about how people communicate now, like
Oh,
Zoom.
yeah.
Huh?
Oh, Zoom, you mean?
Yeah, like, well, not Zoom, because Zoom's very Zoomy, but like, I didn't know if you wanna, if you say it has to be face-to-face or by telephone, like
That excludes Zoom.
yeah, it excludes any
Yeah.
Google Chat, or Google,
Yeah.
what's it called?
Could say
Um,
electronically.
Electronic.
Yeah, so I just, it's such so simple, but like,
2023.
yeah, just-
Okay.
just thinking about like not, if that's the best mechanism for them to meet and that's the way that it's gonna
Yeah.
happen. I think the intent there is, like, you need to talk to somebody,
Yes.
but like the how, we
The
might
how,
wanna
yeah.
not accidentally, like kinda put them in.
I just have one question. Who makes the determination with or without pay?
Typically that's contractual. I mean, that's, I think, where Dr. Earl is talking about with at either of the bargaining units, it's going to be with pay. With actually the administrators, it's with pay as well.
What would be a situation where it would be without pay?
So, off the top of my head,
Coaches maybe?
perhaps a volunteer coach, perhaps like a bus monitor if they're employed by, if they're, working for the bus company or something like that. Consultant, if we had someone in as a consultant who was hourly or something like that.
So this is the work environment of a district employee. So are all those,
Well,
I think that we can expand that definition if we want to include, I mean, the
It
contractor
says
would still be,
yeah. It says, this policy applies to all eligible employees of the district, including employees affiliated with a collective bargaining unit and coaches, consultants, et cetera. That's on the second paragraph under applicability.
Okay, so that doesn't match what's under definition, the employee, okay, employees defined as.
This includes but is not limited to.
So it doesn't seem to really.
We might need a third category.
Yeah,
Cause there's
okay.
administrative leave, employee, and then we probably would wanna add a third category there. Caroline, what's your second one say?
Just like a consultant type thing?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, good.
Did you draw hearts?
I just, I'm at kindergarten.
It's Tony Lead.
How exciting.
And so that's definitely a piece of it.
So G, investigation shall be conducted in accordance with the applicable school committee policies.
So, I mean, I think essentially what would happen is, I know we
You
tabled
guys
the
are
other one,
referencing
but
But
yeah,
that would refer
yeah.
back to that.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
right.
okay.
Like it would note, before we finalize this, it would note which policies.
Yeah, okay.
So going back to Frank's original question about who determines paid or unpaid, it probably isn't really a determination, it will just depend on like the categories, so like, maybe just, we can,
Well,
what were you
depend
saying?
on what's in contract language. for-
Yeah, so for administrators and both unions, it would be pay, but then, like, the unpaid would be like if it was like a volunteer coach that, gets, I guess, a stipend or something.
Yeah, I mean, a volunteer coach, like I said, a bus monitor, if they're not necessarily a union position,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, that person you can suspend, they're not part of the union, and it'd be without pay.
Yeah.
They have no protection.
Yeah.
But I can beef up that definition maybe.
Okay, yeah, just
for
make it a
for
little more,
example, or something
yeah.
like that, yep.
So you gonna make that correction and come back and go?
Yeah, I'll do like I did the other one, I'll redline it and circulate it
Okay,
around.
yeah, and then we can review it with the same personnel who's gonna be here for the discussion at the next meeting.
The other question I had was, and I didn't know if it would be in this policy or a different policy, but I know, something that I think is really important is consistency in, what we're able to be transparent about and not with the reports and
Oh, yeah.
stuff, and so I don't know, and I want the folks, the teachers and folks, you know, all of them to be really clear on that, and so I feel like this might be the place or the policy to put in some of that language, just as far as consistency and also making sure that all individuals understand, like, that information is, like, equitable and that, you know, the investigation reports will be released in accordance to the law, like, I wanna make sure that they're very clear on that in the process.
Yeah, cause we added it to the other one, but you're right, I think
Yeah.
it should go here too, so it's in both places.
Yeah, cause it's talking about timeline and it's talking about things, and so
Yep.
I think that would be something that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Cause if you're looking at it, if something's going on and you're looking at boom, 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 like, I would want that all to be in one spot.
yeah, like at the conclusion of the investigation where it's stating
Yeah.
what'll happen, it would also outline, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
that's where
so you
that
can
would
add
go
that.
to.
Good.
You might wanna add maybe on the applicability, volunteers, as collective bargaining unit, coaches, consultants, et cetera. Et cetera could get you into trouble, I'm not sure what.
Okay.
You might
I
wanna
mean, the other
outline
group
other.
would be volunteers, I mean, that's a large group that, you know, operates within the school department. You just add
Yeah,
volunteers.
maybe HR could, give us some feedback on if there's other categories that aren't, listed here.
Yep.
Cause I think our goal and our intent is that all categories of humans that might be working in the buildings, et cetera, like are,
Interacting with.
yeah, so I think the goal would be if anyone that could be put on leave, like, should be listed, and there's gotta be,
Third-party
they could
vendors,
just,
something like
yeah,
that, yep, yep.
Yeah, some language that like, for example, people who deliver milk,
yeah,
drive the truck, come into the school and accost the kid in some way, I mean.
yeah, so
We don't
maybe,
wanna, we don't wanna
just take a look at it, and then maybe, HR can give us some thoughts too, if we're forgetting some categories.
One other thing is I'm looking at this under E, it says human resources with input from the superintendent or designee shall prepare as necessary notice to staff, students, and community advising on the situation. Human resources shall also notify the school committee. I'd kinda like to see the school committee notified before that notice goes out
Yep,
to
got it.
everybody else.
Or at least at equal time,
Equal, yeah,
not after, that would be awkward.
not after, please.
I know we had noted too, and we've been trying to follow the policy of notifying, staff prior to community announcements going out. Even if, I think it's literally like within minutes, but like just giving them the respect of hearing it. And so I don't know if we wanna put anything about like that order of operations
Mm.
in this part, just first this group, then this group, then this group. And it all could be within, I'm not talking days delay by any means, but just maybe something about that piece of it to formalize that level of communication. And I don't know if we wanna add anything regarding that, like, this is at the like notification part, like up at the kind of mid to beginning of the process, I don't know if like there's anything like a communication regarding, like if there's any further communication needed, like
Like after the conclusion, like another, like.
I meant community-wise, yeah, like this is like at the confusion, this is about the employee, but I didn't, and I know there's legal things and not legal things that can be done, but just something to consider.
You mean like a notice of the status type thing, or?
Well, like, so for example, if you go, like, if you look at E, like, you send E out, right?
Yep.
And then nothing ever again.
There should be an I that looks like E, I think is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, okay, so not a status necessarily, but an outcome.
Outcome.
Yeah, like I'm saying, like, this doesn't need to change, I'm saying like maybe there's something, you know, if there's an outcome that can be released as far as transparency, cause you don't want just like, okay, we told them, like, something happened and this person's on leave or whatever the information is,
Okay.
but then no resolution,
Yeah,
you know,
it should be, the same thing should be sent out at the end.
within legal, of course.
With it, yeah, with some type of a, when it's concluded, there should be some type of notification also,
Okay.
regardless of, like you said, keeping in mind phrasing and legality, at least to say the investigation is complete, here's the outcome to the best of what we can tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, cause I do get inquiries about certain situations, they wanna know if there's closure to it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and
Just
even,
put
even if we
closure,
can't
yeah.
say what the closure is,
Yeah.
that just this has, the investigation has concluded, that, you know, like some sort of,
An appropriate step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is, just,
yeah, like we wanna make sure to not violate anything, but I do think there's a way that you can let folks know that like the process has been followed, and especially if this process is outlined and very clear, people understand what steps were taken,
Right.
and therefore it'll be more clear and transparent. Megan, you picked the wrong meeting, the wellness one's done.
Am I allowed to ask a question about this? Because I just wanna know, I guess in terms of what you're talking about in the investigations and the reports. So I never really got an answer I understood about, so I'm just wondering, looking for consistency.
Mhm.
So the Oliveria reports, the first two, phase 1, phase 2 were released. The other reports by Oliverio and, I'm blanking on his name, Tim, what's his face? Anyway, so the other lawyer were not released.
Mhm.
I just don't know, like, it just kind of seemed arbitrary to me, but
Mhm.
and obviously with redactions, I mean, you know, I get the legalities, but I just never got a clear answer as to the difference between one versus the other.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and I think that's what,
That's-
the
yeah.
intent is here, and so maybe Andrew, if you could, where would that be? Yeah, I think that goes into that part that I was talking about at the very end of,
Yep.
of that piece, so, and again, trying to set some standards, consistency, and also transparency, so people understand, that process, because that's the biggest thing I think too, is institutionalizing something like this, so that when the school committee changes, or when, administration changes, that there's consistency in what does get released, what doesn't
And what
get released, so
doesn't.
that people aren't surprised or feeling
Or
like they're not getting
wondering what-
information.
Cause
Yeah.
what did get released was the notice of final action taken.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're trying to do is to standardize what is going to happen
Yeah.
moving forward,
But
so
maybe,
that
yeah.
people know what to expect.
Yeah, but to that point, also maybe referencing something about, this very specifically, I think, talks about, like, different things, but maybe making sure that we have the language in about the reports as
Yes,
well, like
yeah.
if it.
Yeah,
about
no, I
external
think that's
report, yeah.
important to say that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely want consistency.
Okay, anything else?
Those were my big notes for this
Okay.
first round, I assume we'll
Yeah, we're
look
gonna see
at
it
it
again.
again, so,
Yeah.
and then we'll see it at the school committee
Yes,
level, so.
yes. Did anybody else have any questions or comments on this one?
Thanks for drafting that.
So the next one was the the JFABB, the foreign exchange program. And this one, Frank, you had sent me some comments on
Yeah,
this
I
one.
bracketed an area that if you agree or comment on, and I substituted it with different language. I also reviewed the language with the high school, they provided some of the language that they were comfortable with. And, you know, based on the decision of the school committee, I just formulated that language to see if it makes sense regarding the student exchange program, right? Regarding the diploma and participation in the graduation requirements.
And that was the only change that you wanted to make, was that one change?
I think that was the only thing that was contested.
And so just for clarity, I just wanna find what you sent. Hold on 1 second. Because of course it's at the bottom of the thing. Hold on 1 second.
One question I had, and maybe this is a Jamestown question, is I noticed on item 3, it said, host families in North Kingstown have to be legal residents of North Kingstown, which makes sense, but I was thinking about
Oh, that's a great.
that there wasn't anything about Jamestown, and then I was wondering, oh, maybe they have something in their school committee policy about host families and different things, because Jamestown would be paying the tuition for
That's something
said
to look
student, but just so
into.
something,
That's
yeah,
something
like
to
when I
look
was
into,
reading it,
yeah.
it didn't seem super inclusive of considering the fact that we have a host town that sends
Sends
a
their
lot of
kids to
students. So
us.
just something, while we're in here, might as well
You
maybe
might
make
as
it.
well look at that.
Yeah, so that might be something that we wanna connect with, either our school committee liaison on maybe first.
Yeah, that's a good
To try to
idea.
get some context there.
So Frank, the one change you were saying, it was upon request made to the principal, students meeting all graduation requirements may be eligible to participate in the North Kingstown High School graduation ceremony and receive a North Kingstown High School diploma. Okay. Bob, any thoughts on that?
No, we had
You all
discussed
talked about
this
that
wording,
together?
yes.
Okay.
My question on this one is, and I know it'll vary, from student to student, but making sure if that, usually for an exchange program, like you are in a program, but like you're still like enrolled in your home school and you still get like a diploma from your home school, even if it's your last semester, and so I know with the situation that prompted this conversation, that was not the case, and therefore, but that is something that just making sure that a student's not getting double diplomaed,
Mhm.
I think is really important, and that withdrawal piece, because, like, that would be weird.
Mm.
So I think like that, if we do decide to change that language, and that we decide that that is the choice, then like, making sure that there's some language in there about like, must withdraw from their prior school, or XYZ, or whatever. I think also like changing it and thinking about, if it was to change, like thinking about, like, making sure that, like, just because we could, like, give a diploma, doesn't mean that, like, we are therefore like required to
Right.
give the diploma, and so, you know, like if a student comes in and they're taking different things and we're not able to fulfill those requirements for them, like that's not the district's problem, if
Right.
that makes sense. Like I don't wanna change a policy and then have it flip, like make it another problem, if that makes sense.
Like if they came in and
Hi,
took basket
Caroline.
weaving
Good
all
night.
semester and then weren't able to actually graduate because of that.
I'm sorry, say
Like if they took basket weaving all semester and,
Yeah.
I mean, and therefore
yeah,
were not eligible.
or they wanted to take a class, but they couldn't because it was full or
Right.
whatever, or that class was the thing that would help them get that graduation requirement.
Right.
Like I just wanna make sure we don't cause any unintended consequences. Do we, and may,
How,
I'm sorry.
just to follow up on your question. How will we validate that second diploma, if they got that second diploma in their country? How,
I think you'd have to have a letter of withdrawal from their previous institution
Mm.
or something, right? Like it would be the same way that like,
Transfer students,
like yeah, like
right?
like you would have like something saying that like this student is no longer enrolled in.
so we'd have to create some language for that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
you definitely would want them to withdraw from their school in France before.
If
If they're seeking
a
dipl-
diploma,
yeah.
yeah. How many other instances have we had where students, you probably
With
don't.
me?
Yeah. I know, like, but I wonder how often we've had students who actually are looking for a diploma from us.
Well, it seems like we only bring in 4 a year. That's what the policy
Okay.
stated, right? And then I would assume not all 4 are
Or
seniors.
right.
And I would assume some students want their diploma from their home institution.
Right, yeah.
And so like if I had got abroad my senior year, I would have still wanted an NK
Right.
diploma.
Yeah.
So I imagine that this is a small N, but also like we don't wanna just have a policy that,
No,
you know.
I think it's more like, for me, in my mind, this is more to make sure that the ones who need it, like in the
Yeah.
case of this student where they had withdrawn from their home country's school, are able to get it versus making sure that everybody gets a diploma, you know what I mean?
I also think there's a
Yeah,
big,
you know, the other thing is, suppose they request a transfer of credits from like Kingstown High School to their home school or country. How do we, there's no language that deals with that.
yeah. Well, I assume too, do
Listen.
we, and we'll have to find it, this is a question that I've had, is
It's complicated.
do we go through like sponsoring agents? Like I assume that like there's like a middle company that's helping students get from their home schools
Mm.
to
Mhm.
exchange programs with the host families and all of those sort of things. And so I wonder in their paperwork if there's language about like you can't, like you're not getting a diploma. Like I imagine
Right.
that we work with a company that works with lots of different schools, and so that would be another thing that I would want us to check.
It does say that,
Yeah.
because I remember that this parent
Yeah.
had stated that they had seen that,
Yeah.
but didn't realize it at the time. So is
I
this?
guess we don't have, well, I think to Erin's point about the dual diploma, we're only gonna be responsible for them to meet our graduation requirements.
Right.
And they put in a request for that. If they meet it, they get the high school diploma. If they do something in their home country, I don't know how we would figure out the language for all that.
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing too I was thinking about is to me, and maybe it's not, this maybe the educators at the high school don't think about that. There's a big difference between like getting a diploma and being able to participate in graduation like ceremonies. Like, you know, like I feel like if you wanna walk with the class and do the thing, that's very different than getting like conferred a diploma,
Mhm.
even though like that is assumed that it's the same thing, it's not.
Mhm.
And so that's another thing that thinking about it is like, are they able to participate in that ritual and in that thing, even though they're not getting an NK diploma? Like that's a difference too, I think.
Yeah, that is a difference.
Because like I get students wanting that experience if they're here and they
Mhm.
wanna be with their friends and different things, but that's very different than like receiving a diploma. So that's something else I think we should consider, kind of that language about, cause I imagine that's a thing for students as well that might
Does
not.
that need to be in here, do you think?
Well, it says like, but will not participate in the actual graduation ceremony, like it talks about it, and so it says they may take part in all activities while at North Kingstown, but will not participate in the actual graduation ceremony. And then it goes on to say diplomas will not be granted, and so just as we move forward, like in deciding what's the right choice or not, like if we did decide like, no, like there's, the diploma piece is too complex, et cetera, maybe there's a middle ground where we say students can participate in the graduation ceremony upon approval of, you know, the principal or the
Right,
superintendent
right.
or something. Like I'm just thinking about like,
Yeah.
there's different levels here in my mind of participating in a ceremony with your friends and actually getting a legal document that says you graduated.
I mean, I think the language that Dr. Palat, if I recall it correctly, does, you've gotta have this meeting with the principal, and it's a
Yeah.
request, it's not a guarantee, so maybe, you know, in that meeting, you come up with some kind of a checklist or a form that addresses, well, you know, are you getting another diploma? Are you asking just to walk the stage, are you asking to participate in this, what are the circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
And then kinda, like you said, depending on what the ask is, and what the situation is also, you don't want this policy to be read that you get to participate in all the graduation requirements if the student academically wouldn't be able to, or, you know, based on some discipline or something, wouldn't be able to. I think the intent is you wanna treat them as a North Kingston student with
Yeah.
the diploma issue.
So maybe we change it to something like upon request made to the principal, students meeting all graduation requirements may be eligible to participate in the NKHS graduation ceremony and or receive a NKHS diploma. And then then that leaves it open to the principal to make the decision.
And then it comes to you guys on
And then it
appeal.
comes to us
Cause
on
I don't think
appeal.
you'll never address
Right.
every
Mhm.
situation and every request in this policy, so if you set up a mechanism that they can get in and make the, like, I would like to think the situation we just heard recently, that would have
Is an
ended,
anomaly, yeah.
yeah, but that would have ended right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
okay,
cause that
this-
would have
this
given
makes
the
perfect
principal the
sense.
leeway to make the decision,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it could just be something where it loosens that language and then, like it only gets to the superintendent and the
Yeah,
school
and then if they
committee,
appeal
but,
to
yeah.
you folks, and then, but it comes out that, well, I didn't grant the request,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
here's why, oh, okay,
Right,
you know.
right.
Yeah, so it could just be softening
Yeah,
that piece of that
making
language.
it, giving the discretion at the building level. That might be the simplest way to do it.
I think so, because I think we'll get lost in the weeds trying to account for every
Single possible.
every situation.
scenario.
Yep.
So do we need to tweak that language and then look at a tweak for number 5? Like,
I
kind of
think-
what's our next step and what information do
Like,
we need, I
with
guess is
what
I'm
Frank
asking.
sent me, he just says, what he sent me, it went from students may take part in all class activities while they are at North Kingstown,
Yep.
and then as it's written, it says, but will not participate, blah, 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 and then it sounds like we could change it to, but upon request made to the principal, students meeting all graduation requirements may be eligible to participate in the graduation ceremony and or receive a diploma, and that gives the discretion to the principal,
Yeah,
and then the principal could make the decision or could appeal it up through.
yeah, they say no, then
Yeah.
it could go to the superintendent,
Right.
and the superintendent, so it could
Right,
go to school
yeah.
committee, but at least they would have the autonomy to make decisions at the building level as
Correct.
appropriate versus they had no choice at this point to say
But to
no
send it out
because
as we
the
did,
policy was
as
stated as such,
written. And then maybe
yeah.
the only thing is just to send a note to Jamestown and just find out about the Jamestown thing, and why, I'm sure it has something to do with the tuition part of it,
It's just not addressed at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the only piece about like our students who wanna be like if there's a host family in Jamestown that wants to host a student.
Yeah, having just gone through that Jamestown contract, I think the introduction to that contract is they'll be afforded all of the rights.
Yeah, so I would imagine,
In
But
my head, I think that if
I
I'm a
think so
Jamestown
too.
person and I say, here's a foreign exchange student living with a Jamestown resident and wants to attend your high school, I think that does it. But we
Yeah.
could certainly, this might be an opportunity to
Yeah,
kind
just
of
to
it's
tell
just
you-
weird
clean
cause
that
it
up a little
calls it
bit.
out specifically
Yes.
about
Yeah.
North Kingston,
Well,
so.
And because we say we may accept up to 4, if there was like, if that pushed it beyond 4, then like, like I think just worth a conversation, it could be a very low situation, but.
Yeah, but it just feels like it feels the way this is written, that it is specifically excluding Jamestown families
Okay.
from
Yeah, number 3.
sending them in, so
Yeah.
let's just clarify that while we're,
That would apply to
touching
CTE
this.
kids, right? I mean,
Well,
CTE kids.
That's why I'm wondering if this is actually in there.
No, I think it's on purpose,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And CTE kids, so a family has a student coming from Coventry and they go and they are being hosted in Coventry, and then the student says, no, I don't wanna go to Coventry High School, I wanna do the CTE program, like, this policy would prevent that. Which might be good or might be bad, but then also, like, but with Jamestown, it's very specifically different, cause we do have a contract, like, you know, like, it's, that one I think is
broader.
slightly different than CTE, but also I'm sure when they wrote this policy, originally in 1973, and then most recently in 2018, like, that wasn't as popular, like, that concept of CTE and school choice and different things wasn't as popular, so just, I think, just so we don't have to relook at this policy again in the near future, like, just talking to them might be worth it. I assume that the timeline, like, there was nothing else, like, that the principals had issue with as far as the timeline or anything like that. But maybe that's just something we can double check on if there's anything else in here, or like making sure that those courses are called exactly that still, you know, like it very specifically says, you know, select courses in American literature, US history, and democracy, like just making sure that those are consistent,
Yes.
so with what we actually offer
What they
in
say in
the
the
course
program of
titles and
studies,
stuff,
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you know, like if we're gonna tighten it up, like just making sure that,
it's all,
yeah.
um,
And then if we do put something in, I wonder if there's some sort of timeline that we would wanna put in for that request. You know, so if you were gonna ask the principal to participate in graduation or diploma.
please don't ask on June 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes.
maybe asking the building
Okay.
principal if we wanna put, you know, requesting to be received by April 1st or
Gotcha.
May 1st or, you know, whatever it might be,
Yep.
Just to,
At the end of the third quarter.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
something
what's a
like-
good timeline, do you think?
Yeah.
Well, the
I would
third
ask the
quarter ends
building.
like right around now, I think the
but
third
like, is that
quarter's-
too late? Has things gone to print for graduate? I have no idea.
Yeah,
So
I
I would
don't
just
know.
think, I'm sure Barbara, Dr. Morris would be able to
Can we
advise,
ask
but
that question? Can somebody ask?
Dr. Morris?
Yeah.
Ask what question?
Like, what would be if the request is gonna be made to participate in,
When-
by a foreign
what
teacher?
is third quarter,
Yeah,
does
like, what
the
is
end of third
the-
quarter make sense? Yeah, but we could ask that.
Who's gonna ask that?
It looks like Bob's writing it down.
Bob's
I'll
writing it
write
down.
You wrote it
What
down.
was saying? You wrote it down,
Yeah,
clearly he's in
that's
charge
it.
now.
Okay,
That's a good
yeah.
plan, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah, cause I know they're already talking about like what name is going on the,
Yeah, so
how it's
just,
gonna be
you know, like if, I noticed there were some
graduation.
other deadline things in here, and so, you know, just putting, if we are gonna change the language, and that's where we go.
Yeah, the request must be received by is a good one, cause,
Yeah.
okay. So that's probably good for today, but I would like to discuss timing for that, so we got through, well, kind of, so,
Can I just ask for item E based on the citizens comment?
Yes.
So that was the professional conduct with students, if Mr. Mitchell's reaching out to the principal regarding,
yes, do you wanna
the
bring it
other
to
one,
next meeting?
yeah,
Yeah,
could we ask, for Dr. Morris's opinion, because I wasn't under the impression that the dress code language in the student handbook had been changed, as was referenced in that email, and so would love some building administration, if something did change, I'm not aware of it, and so, just kind of figuring out where that lives with this policy, based on those comments, before we make any thoughts or changes, perhaps to that professional conduct with student policy.
could we actually have Dr. Morse come to the next meeting?
Could she be the she could be the building
Yeah,
administrator from
could-
the high school,
yeah.
right? But maybe give her heads up that we'd like to.
That we're gonna discuss this policy at that time as well.
Okay, so what is the question?
So the question that, that we received the citizens comment that was talking about this policy, and in that it referenced that Dr. Morris had suspended, a dress code policy that I was not aware was suspended, and it might be true or it might not be true, or maybe there's a misinterpretation, and so I, from my understanding, that's still in the student handbook for the high school, and so I just love some more context about maybe there was if there was a change, if that is indeed true, and then also if there was a change, like where that coincides with the policy, the GBEBB policy.
I mean, if you look at number 9, I think this is what they had spelled out. Either objectifying the student,
Yeah.
I think, is more quantifiable. I don't think that's an issue, at least in my mind, but I think that the issue would be and/or compromising the student's social and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
So where does
Where
does that land if you say you can't wear that shirt because, or you can't,
Yeah.
you know, and the student feels offended by that, which is possible, Now, have you,
violated the emotional well-being.
Yeah,
And this
that's
is a
kinda what I'm
policy that
thinking.
went into place last June, it's been less than one school year, and so maybe adjustments have been, needed to be made at the building level because the teachers and administrators are concerned, and I would like to hear that firsthand. And so that's what
So
my
you want her
request
to be in
is.
a position to talk about this specific policy?
Yeah.
And what policy is that again?
that's
It's-
GBEBB.
It's one of the tongue twister ones.
Not so much the policy, but the
BB,
concerns that she's raised.
I think it's that number 9
Well, we
is
don't even
pretty
know if
much-
she has concerns.
Yeah.
I just like to hear from her on if this policy is had an unintended consequence that maybe is butting up against the student handbook
That's probably
and
what
the
it is
administration.
right there.
Oh, I'm sure that's what it is, but I'd like to
Yep.
hear it from Dr.
Yeah.
Morris, because I think when they put this language in place, the intent was to make things better.
Right.
But if it's having an adverse effect and we're gonna consider this policy, I'd like to hear from the building administrators. I assume the high school would be most affected, but the middle school principals might have.
The school
Or
committee
even elementary.
approved the handbooks?
No,
Does that come before the school committee? Really?
really.
Okay.
I'm new here. No, I mean, we could make a
Well,
policy,
No,
if
there-
that's,
I mean,
yeah,
there
that's
are a lot
something we
of
might wanna
districts
look
where
at, yeah.
handbooks have to be approved
We
by
do
the
the
school
program of
committee.
study, we did that,
We do have two, but in the 2
Yeah.
years that I've been on the school committee,
Yeah.
we've never approved a handbook.
My question too would be, like, where are the handbooks legal documents? Are they policies, or are they not policies? Like, is the program of study,
Well,
where does the program of
sometimes the
study?
handbooks quote policy.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, if you're looking to discipline a student or
Yeah.
enforce something that's in the handbook,
Yeah.
that's a legally binding document.
Yeah.
Yep.
So someone should probably be glancing
Well,
at that.
Yeah, I mean, usually they refer, they cover FERPA, they, usually have a thing
So
of
maybe
bullying policy
we could
in there.
ask the district, maybe we could have a look at that student handbook, just to make sure that,
We'd have to look at the consistency of the handbooks, particularly at the elementary
That was my
level.
next
Yeah.
question.
Well, and I
It's
believe that is in the,
That's
That's
one,
in-
that's one
that's
of
in
the
the-
things,
yes,
that
it
was,
is.
which is not unique to North
right,
Kingston,
you're talking
you have
about nobody.
different, yeah,
Andrew knows what we're talking about.
yeah, and I've seen it, again, not North Kingston, where each elementary school has its own handbook, and middle schools have their own, and none of them, I mean, sometimes it's actually
That is an
frightening.
issue here, cause the
They
middle
just, there's
school
no
handbooks do
communication,
not,
or
yes.
one just updated last year, one's 15
Mhm.
years old, so the best practice is to at least have an elementary, middle high, or middle and high
One for
handbook.
each level.
One for each level that's consistent throughout the
And I
district
think
as a,
that's in the document, yeah.
yeah.
So is there, I know this, I'm gonna pose it like a question, but I'm pretty sure it's a statement. So we don't have a policy regarding how those get created or who approves them in this district?
That is correct.
Okay, can we add that to a
Okay.
future list?
Mm.
Yeah. Not that I just think for consistency's sake, and again, for institutionalizing processes, so that you don't go from one elementary school to another
And
and then
you're
have
like,
different
"What's that?"
standards.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially in a small town, where we're talking about, like, Quinn and Forest Park are a matter of minutes from each other kind of vibe, so. Yeah, let's add that to a future.
Point of clarification, forgive
Yeah.
me for okay, so the issue, we want Dr. Morse to come to talk about specifically the dress code policy and specifically number 9.
Yeah, so it's not that, let me try to clarify what I'm looking for. So the policy is professional conduct with students, and it was put into place in
Professional
June.
conduct,
Yeah, professional conduct student, June of 2022, and there is a specific line that I assume is the catalyst for this, but I'd love to maybe I'm wrong, and that is the one about, it's letter, what is it?
It's number 9, you want the policy letter?
Yeah, it's number 9, right?
Yeah,
So,
can you give me the policy again?
yep, so the policy.
GBE,
BB.
GBEBB.
GBEBB.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this got put into place in June, and so what I heard from the citizens' comments was that they believe, due to this policy, that the high school has changed their practices. That's what I heard. But so what I would love clarification on is that true? And if yes, like, why, so that we can better understand the impact of this policy on the day-to-day practices? And
Alright,
if that's a
so-
good thing or a bad thing, like,
okay.
I would like to hear it from the
Alright, so
building principal.
really the question is, let's get her in here to talk about this particular policy
Yeah.
and how it's impacted the school and staff.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, that's
if it
really-
has,
okay.
and it sounds like from what the I assume parent that wrote us, they feel like it might have, but I would like to give the building administration some opportunity to come talk to us about it, because maybe it is causing a problem, but we don't know it and we need to re-examine it, or maybe it isn't causing a problem and I would like clarification on that. Because it sounds like they have their own autonomy of being able to do whatever they want right now with the handbooks, and the handbook is where the dress code lives. And so, and the current handbook that's on the website has a very clear dress code, and that needs to be, that should be enforced and can, I believe, be enforced still in conjunction with this policy.
Perhaps.
Yeah, so that's where I would like the legal opinion on it.
Yeah, I have to see what's in,
Yeah. It's on the web, you can try it. Yeah, so let's look at those two things in conjunction, because if we have a policy that's preventing, we wanna make sure that we're not, that everything's consistent. That was the only other thing I thought might need some follow-up stuff.
You should be creating the handbook from the policy. And if there's no policy, then you don't wanna give them that complete autonomy, because they'd be the final decision maker. I mean, everybody has a right to appeal the process if there's something wrong with it, but they have the right to appeal the process because the school committee has approved
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and that's where I asked it for us to maybe put on something about having a process where we approve the level handbooks, because I don't wanna, I wanna leave I think it's important that they have, autonomy to write things and different things, but at least if it's gonna come up and the superintendent and us are gonna be the appeal process, then we need to, I think, at least have
I agree.
something there.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm not advocating for us to create a district-wide policy, cause I think that's difficult with the different levels and different things, but I think at least maybe a look at that might be a helpful checks and balances. Anything else?
So the plan for the next meeting then will.
We're gonna table the other ones for
We are
today.
gonna table the other ones. Will be to 18,000 tabs, I'm sorry. We'll go, at the next meeting, it'll be the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Building usage again, the non-discrimination policy, the administrative leave policy, foreign exchange, which should be super quick, and then the professional conduct. I don't think we'll have time to get through the next 3. Those relate to some changes, in the BCI regulations that the Attorney General's office put through.
Do you want me to take the liberty of just kinda cut and paste? Okay, I didn't wanna presuppose, but that'll take me no time, and that way you'll have a working.
Yes.
Yep.
It's gonna mirror the
So
statute, right?
Andrew will
According
update
to the
those to meet the statute, and then we can look at those.
Yep. And so as for the date, as I mentioned before, I would like us to meet more than once a month, because we do have many policies to get through since this committee didn't meet. So today is the 3rd, next week is spring break, I know people will likely be busy catching up, but if there is a date the week of the 17th that we could meet, maybe before the school committee meeting, if people don't mind a marathon session, or
I can't do that, it's not possible.
before the 19th, the town council meeting, or the Monday, I can be flexible, whatever works for everybody else.
Was one of those the 19th?
Yes.
I'm open on the 19th. It's 98 here.
Or the 20th, I can do anything that week.
Isn't that the town council meeting where we have to?
Yeah, I'm saying before that, before the 19th,
Well, 2 weeks from
No,
today
we have
is
to
the
go to
17th,
the
right?
24th is the town council meeting, isn't it?
no, it's the 19th.
Oh, the 19th is the budget
Yes.
hearing.
Yeah.
I have town council on the 17th and the 19th, I don't know why I have on the
Oh, is
17th,
it
maybe that's just their
19th?
regular meeting.
The public hearing on the school budget's on the 19th.
The 19th, yeah,
I don't know if they also have the 17th.
okay, I might have imagined that.
Maybe it would have fallen like that with their normal, double check though, I could be very, very wrong. I could do that Monday.
The 17th?
Yeah.
We have negotiations at 6.
Oh, I most certainly
Oh,
don't.
no, SK, I'm sorry.
I was like, what are you
negotiations at
talking
6.
about?
NEA.
You just said.
SK, not NEA, NK, I apologize.
So, but that's a no for you.
Yeah, I can't, sorry.
No, you're right, they don't have it, there is no town council meeting that night,
Yeah. could do prior to the school committee meeting, although that is not usually my preference, as I usually use it to prep, like last minute prep and whatnot, but I could if needed. I could do before the budget meeting, but again, like, making sure that we're prepared and ready for that one as needed, although I don't know if it's just a listening,
Listening.
yeah, it's mostly, yeah. So I could do that Wednesday anytime after 4:30.
So what works better for everybody else, the Tuesday or the Wednesday, in like the 4 o'clock-ish range?
So I can definitely do the Wednesday, I can probably do the the Tuesday rather, I got a hearing at the Council of Ed at 3, but I can see if someone else in my office can cover it, it would just be contingent on that.
Frank and Bob?
Which day, 17 or?
18 or 19.
Either 18 or 19.
Sometimes I can-
I'll, whatever you,
I think it's at
I'll make myself available, either one.
Either one, I would rather not meet before we don't have to report out on the 19th, Aaron?
No, I think it's just the comments, like citizens' comments, I believe that's at 6?
I have it at wait, I just had it up, I have it at 6, it's at 6:30.
On their website it says 6.
I'm looking right at the website, it says 6:30.
Oh, I'm sure, but, see, I'm not hallucinating.
I'm sure you're not, this is 6:30. Maybe they have executive session at 6?
Maybe. We can clarify, okay, so let's figure out a day one and then we can confirm maybe.
Okay,
So
let's
is
do
the-
Wednesday, because we don't have to actually use our brains for
Yeah.
that meeting
Yeah, okay,
as much.
do you wanna check with your schedule and then we can confirm that?
Yeah,
So
let me
the
just,
19th?
Yeah,
The 19th?
and then you'll check and see if
Yep.
you can get
Yeah.
coverage, and we can confirm via the email.
And I'll see if I can get the downstairs conference room, that way we're there, is that good?
Yes, for the town, yes, we would just have to bring a thing with us.
Yeah. I'll see if Chaz will let me take it, it's like taking the class pet home with you, I'll see if I can take it home with me.
Don't kill the turtles again.
The 19th at what time?
4 o'clock,
I can't do, it has to be 4:30.
4:30, okay. Okay.
are we,
Does that work?
yeah, we on the 19th or the 18th, I think I can.
The 19th, 4/19.
19th, I don't even, 19th I'm fine.
Okay, so 4/19 at 4:30 at the town hall, I'm gonna try for the first floor conference room, if that doesn't work, I'll let people know. Okay,
Because you need space for if citizens wanna come.
yeah, I mean, based on,
Yeah,
It should be
there's,
plenty,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree, just something that I can think
yeah.
of.
And if I
Well,
can't
no,
get-
we need a space for our guests too, like, I don't know what that room fits.
we can
It's
fit
like,
this.
it's like 8 or 9,
We can fit
yeah,
this many, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
alright.
It's okay, you can have the principals come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can always do it at the high school,
No,
I can pick a room
yeah, that's
there.
pretty close
Yeah.
too.
But,
Yeah, I think it's fine, I was
Yeah.
just thinking through, like,
yeah, we were in there before, remember?
I think it's 1, 2. I think it's like 9